Right, if you want a short southwest coast path near St Austell with big coastal views, a hidden cove, and a circular route that doesn't turn into an all-day mission, this walk out to Blackhead is a really good one. You start up at Trenarren, you're on the coast path within minutes, and you get those wide St Austell Bay views stretching across towards Charlestown, Polkerris and the Gribbin. From there, the route drops down to a hidden little cove at Hallane Beach for a breather before looping back through the hamlet and returning to the car. Just a quick heads up though, this isn't suitable for pushchairs or wheelchairs. After wet weather, this path can be more mud than path, so decent footwear makes a big difference. We'll start up at Trenarren and I'll show you the route as we go. Trenarren sits on the south coast of Cornwall between Porthpean and Pentewan, just outside St Austell. It's one of those places you would probably never stumble across unless you were heading here on purpose. The walk we're doing today forms a circular route heading out along the southwest coast path to Blackhead, dropping down to Hallane Beach and looping back inland through the hamlet. This works particularly well if you're staying around Charlestown, Pentewan or Porthpean and want a proper coast path walk close by. Most people allow somewhere around an hour and a half to 2 hours once you factor in stopping and taking in the views. It suits walkers who want strong coastal scenery without committing to a long distance hike, although it does include uneven ground, steps and steady climbs. Dogs usually enjoy this route as long as they're kept under control near cliff edges and grazing animals. The walk begins at the small car park at the top of Trenarren, which is realistically as far as you can go by car in this direction. It is easy to miss if you're not looking for it, and parking spaces are fairly limited, especially during school holidays and sunny summer weekends. There are no toilets or facilities here, so most people tend to stop elsewhere before arriving. Even during busy visitor seasons, this starting point usually feels quieter than the larger beaches around St Austell. Once you leave the car park, you'll quickly join the southwest coast path heading out towards Blackhead. The path is generally well worn and easily enough to follow, so navigation usually straightforward. Within a few minutes, the views begin opening out across St Austell Bay and you start to get that proper exposed coastal feeling. From this stretch, you can often see across the bay towards Charlestown Harbour, Polkerris and the Gribbin Daymark standing out along the coastline. The terrain here is typical for a Cornwall coast path, with uneven ground, natural steps, and sections that can become muddy after wet weather. The distance might only sound short, but Cornish coastal miles often feel longer because of the ups and downs and ground conditions. Good walking shoes usually make this section far more enjoyable, especially after periods of rain when the path tends to hold water. As you continue along the route, you'll reach the site of an Iron Age fort which dates back more than 2,000 years. There is very little obvious structure left today, mainly low earth mounds, and most people would never notice it without information signs. Knowing it is here slightly changes how you see the headland, especially when you think about how strategically important these viewpoints would have been. A little further along the path, you can also spot the remains of an old rifle range, where parts of the former target structures can still be seen if you take a moment to look. It feels slightly unexpected in what is now a very peaceful part of the coast and adds another layer of local history to the walk. Carrying along from here brings you out to Blackhead itself, which is usually the standout viewpoint of this walk. The headland gives wide panoramic views across St Austell Bay, and on clear days you can trace the coastline from Gribbin across towards Pentewan and sometimes further. This is usually the spot where most people stop for photos or just to take everything in. In summer, you often get bright blue water and clear coastal visibility, while in winter or early spring, this stretch can feel much wilder and more dramatic. This is also a natural decision point on the route. If you're feeling energetic, you can carry on along the southwest coast path towards Pentewan in one direction, or Porthpean in the other, both of which extend the walk quite a bit. Most people stick to the circular route though, which keeps the walk manageable while still seeing the best viewpoints. Leaving Blackhead, the coast path continues and gradually begins dropping down towards Hallane Beach. The scenery becomes slightly more sheltered here as you move away from the exposed headland. The descent includes more uneven ground and stepped sections, so most walkers naturally slow their pace down. At the bottom you reach Hallane Beach, which is really more of a small rocky cove than a wide sandy beach. When the tide is higher, the beach space can feel limited, but it still has plenty of character with rock formations and small waterfalls running down from the cliffs behind. When the tide drops, more ground usually appears, which makes it easier to sit, explore, or let dogs have a wander. The coast path into this cove is definitely not suitable for anyone who struggles with walking, pushchairs or wheelchairs because of the uneven ground and steep sections. You could skip the coast path if you wanted to reach the beach by walking down through Trenarren along the road, but even the path leading from the end of the road down to the cove is rough. When I visited, parts of it were actually more like a small stream running along the path. You also would not get the big panoramic views from Blackhead if you missed out the coast path section, which is really one of the highlights of this walk. There are no facilities or lifeguards here, so most visitors treat this as somewhere to stop and enjoy the surroundings rather than a main swimming beach. This cove usually stays noticeably quieter than the main beaches around St Austell, even during busy summer periods. From the cove, the circular route heads inland and takes you back through Trenarren. Trenarren is a small traditional Cornish hamlet made up mainly of stone cottages, and it tends to stay very peaceful. There are no shops, cafes or visitor facilities here, and traffic is usually limited to the handful of residents who live in the area. Walking through Trenarren gives a nice contrast to the coastal scenery, but it's worth knowing the return route climbs steadily uphill. The climb is not especially steep, but it continues most of the way back towards the car park, which can catch people out after relaxing at the beach. Eventually, the road leads you back to the starting point at the car park, completing the circular walk. Most people finish this walk feeling like they have covered a good stretch of Cornwall coastline without needing to commit to a full day out. This route works particularly well if you're staying around St Austell or visiting places like Charlestown, Pentewan or Pentewan, and want to add a scenic coastal walk to your day. If you're staying in Pentewan or Charlestown and looking for a southwest coast path nearby, this is a very handy one to have on your list. Also a good example of how the southwest coast path around Cornwall often delivers dramatic scenery in relatively short sections. Weather plays a big part in how this walk feels because clear or settled conditions really bring out the views across the bay. After prolonged rain, and the path often becomes noticeably muddy and slippery, which usually slows the walking times and makes footing more important. Parking pressure here builds quite quickly during peak holiday periods, so earlier starts or visiting outside the busy seasons usually means a quieter experience. The walk itself is free to access, although most visitors naturally combine it with nearby food stops, beaches or villages, which is where the day normally picks up its costs. The Blackhead and Trenarren Circular Walk is a good example of how much variety you can find along the southwest coast path without needing to travel far. You get sweeping sea views, traces of local history, and a small cove that feels slightly tucked away from the main visitor spots. It works well whether you're visiting Cornwall for the first time or you live locally and just want a dependable coastal walk with strong scenery. It is the sort of walk people often remember because it quietly delivers a bit of everything Cornwall does well in one short route. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time, cheers you.